as easily as they might order a meal. New legislation and state initiatives are starting to take shape, however, with an aim to end modern-day slavery.
Hopefully we're going to do a great deal to help prevent some of the really horrific crimes.
Human trafficking in this country is almost always sex slaves, and it's been reported in every state, making headlines in California, Tennessee, and Missouri just this weekend. According to the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, some 3,000 kids reported as runaways were likely trafficked last year. 3,000! And that's just a fraction.
I lost my virginity and was raped.
The new documentary, I Am Jane Doe, highlights young women such as J.S.
When I grow up, I'd like to be a doctor.
She was first victimized at age 15.
We will never be the family we were.
Many of the websites, motels, and storefronts that act as covers for these crimes go unchecked until it's too late. Today, Missouri attacked the issue head-on. Republican Congresswoman Ann Wagner introduced bipartisan legislation to make it easier for victims to sue websites that post illegal ads related to human trafficking. And Missouri's Attorney General Josh Hawley made good on a campaign promise.
I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it.
Missouri will now have first-in-the-nation regulations using consumer protection laws to combat human trafficking, one of many new initiatives focused on ending the problem for good. And joining me now is Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, what prompted your office to take this action today? Why did this become an issue that you cared about on the campaign?
Well, it's an epidemic all over our country, Jake, and it's an epidemic that touches us here in Missouri. Missouri families, Missouri young women, Missouri children. Potentially thousands are at risk, and I promised my office would do something about it. We would take decisive action, and to date we have begun to do just that.
So your new action uses consumer protection laws to go after traffickers. How does that differ from the more traditional methods?
You know, this is the first of its kind, these regulations that I introduced today, that I promulgated today. And what it says is businesses that are used as fronts for trafficking rings, it makes the use of those front businesses illegal. And we hope that using consumer protection will add more tools to the toolbox for law enforcement. Traditional criminal tools are great, Jake, but often they are difficult for law enforcement to use. So what we're doing is targeting the deceptive and commercial aspects of trafficking and making those illegal in our state.
Like such as what? Such as advertising, such as hotels? Give us an example of how this might work, hypothetically.
Sure, for example, so a lot of times traffickers use businesses like nail salons or massage parlors or bars as fronts. And so they run what looks like a legitimate business, but in fact there is a trafficking ring going on behind the scenes. Well, today's regulations that I issued make using the business as a front like that illegal. So we can go after the business that is actually fronting for the trafficking ring. I also made illegal in this state what's known as debt bondage. That's when traffickers say, you know, I'm going to give you something of value, but then I'm going to make you work to pay off my gift. That is now illegal under Missouri's consumer protection statutes under the regulations I issued today.
And how will this impact how criminals are charged when they're charged with trafficking? Will punishments be more severe, or would you have to get the legislature involved for that?
Well, actually, our consumer protection statutes allow us to levy both criminal and civil penalties. And so traffickers who violate the regulations I issued today will be on the hook not only for all of the traditional criminal statutes that already exist, but for fines under the consumer protection statutes and criminal penalties, felonies, under the consumer statutes as well. So these regulations are powerful, and we hope that they will open a new front in the fight on trafficking.
And as you know, a lot of these laws will be more effective when victims are able to speak up and bring attention to it. That's hard to do in a lot of these cases. Is that a focus at all of what you're doing?
Yeah, indeed. And in fact, Jake, one of the impetuses for the regulations that I issued today is to make it easier for victims to come forward and cooperate. We hope that these new regulations will allow law enforcement, including my office, where we're devoting new resources to this issue, allow law enforcement to prove these cases without having to rely so heavily on victims. It is an incredibly arduous task for victims to come forward. Many times, of course, they're in danger for their lives. We're sensitive to that, and we're trying to develop a new approach that is easier for victims but tough on traffickers.
And have you spoken to any of these victims, survivors of sex trafficking? What do they tell you?
And I sure have. I've had the privilege to speak to folks who have overcome trafficking, who have survived it, and now are thriving. And what they say is, we don't realize how common the problem is, just how widespread it is. It happens in every community in my state. It happens in every community around this country. Victims, oftentimes, they're kept in the shadows. Sometimes they're shunned publicly because of the association with prostitution. We need to end all of that. We need to welcome victims with open arms, help them back into society to make a future of their lives, and we need to go after traffickers in tough new ways, and that's what today's regulations do.
All right, Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley, thank you and good luck. That is it for the lead. I'm Jake Tapper. I turn you over to Wolf Blitzer, who's right next door in the Situation Room. Thanks for watching.